नमस्ते। आज काफ़ी टाइम के बाद हम शो पे आए हैं। तकरीबन 3 हफ्ते हो गए नहीं आए। आज सबसे मिलके बहुत खुशी हो रही है। आज के जो हमारे स्पीकर हैं बहुत स्पेशल हैं और हमारे साथ जो जुड़ रहे हैं, जो हमारी मॉडरेटर हैं डॉक्टर मनीषा बोस, जो लेक्चरर हैं, असम्पशन यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ाती हैं, लीडरशिप फैसिलिटेटर, क्रॉस कल्चर कम्युनिकेशन कंसल्टेंट हैं, चैप्टर हेड थाईलैंड वुमेन पावर ग्लोबल मूवमेंट की करती हैं, नारी शक्ति जो हैं। तो मैं उनको पहले स्क्रीन पे बुलाता हूँ। वेलकम मनीषा जी ऑन द स्क्रीन। मनीषा जी
नमस्ते।
नमस्ते, कैसे हैं आप?
मैं ठीक हूँ, आप कैसे हैं?
मैं बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ। आज मुझे बहुत 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 खुशी हो रही कि आपने एक स्पिरिचुअल सोल जो हैं वो हमारे पास आ रहे हैं, जिनका जो सुना तो बहुत खुशी हुई कि भाई ऐसे महापुरुष भी हमारे पास आ रहे हैं। तो सिद्धार्थ कृष्णा जी जो हमने उनको बुलाया है आज स्क्रीन पे। तो let me give you brief introduction of him. Siddharth Krishna was raised in a family tradition of yoga. He was educated at Kailas Ashram Brahma Vidya Peetha, a high reputed monastery focusing on teaching of Vedanta, whose name is related to well-known scholars and masters. Later, he taught courses on Sanskrit grammar and Indian philosophy at the same monastery and also edited their publication on Vedanta. In further study, he was specialized on Vedanta, yoga, philosophy, as well as he has published translations of commentary in Sanskrit texts. Siddhartha also writes column in quarterly magazine Australian Yoga Life and Chinese Yoga Journal. Currently, he teaches at the Pantanjali Yoga Center in Rishikesh, India, and as a guest instructor abroad also. In his philosophical discourse, he discussed the ancient yogic text in the way which supports the more universal understanding of yogic wisdom and its source, the Veda, in accordance with the modern intellect thoughts. He had learned Gita at the age of 4. Unbelievable. A very welcome to have a conversation with Siddhartha ji. He also got the award, Shiromani Award. मनीषा जी, अभी आप कुछ बताएं इनको। हम स्क्रीन पे तो बुलाएंगे अभी, तो आप कुछ उनके बारे में कुछ बताएं। आपको तो बहुत नॉलेज है उनके लिए इनका।
नहीं, मैंने I read about Siddhartji in a book where somebody had quoted him, and that is how I got in touch with him. And I was always very curious, and I would write questions to him, and I found his knowledge not only very profound but very well-rounded. He has been reading, studying, and also teaching yoga, ancient texts for about 4 decades, and still I found him very modern, very democratic, and most importantly, which he once wrote, that no knowledge or nothing can not everything can be criticized. That is the true Vedantic tradition. So that was something which I have never met somebody or interacted with somebody as
Mhm.
amazing and as clear minded as Siddharth.
So let's bring him on a screen. Let's welcome him. Namaskar.
Namaste, Namaskar ji. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you so much.
Ji, Manisha, over to you.
Yes. Siddharthji, I was just telling Papni ji that I am truly delighted and honored that whatever interactions I've had with you, they're like notes which are with me. And today is the first time we are talking. I've always had written communication with you, and they
Yes,
have
absolutely.
become the life notes for me. And so I thought that your knowledge should be shared. So, what we'll do is we will talk very general about spirituality, and then we will talk a little about Gita. तो ये हम बहुत casual रखेंगे इस conversation को. So, your upbringing itself has been very, very unique. आपको 4 साल की उम्र में गीता आ गई थी. You are a very special child. So can you tell me something about your childhood?
जी, मैं पैदा तो भारत में ही हुआ, फिर उसके बाद पिताजी माताजी they took me to Switzerland when I was 10 months old, I think, approximately. And since Pitaji had a temple at home and he was teaching Bhagwat Gita and yogic texts, even there at a small center that he had founded uh, in Konstanz, near the border with Germany in Switzerland. I grew up in that environment and very naturally started imbibing these teachings as part of my upbringing. It was very difficult for my father to give me some a spiritual environment there in Switzerland, but he still tried his best by taking me, for example, whenever it was possible, to the Hare Krishna temples or to Omkarananda Ashram in winter tour. So I grew up, I spent a lot of time as a child playing with kids at those ashrams and temples. So he gave me that environment as much as he could when I was growing up there. And then around at the age of 4.5, when I was 4.5, he decided that he needs to come back so that I receive further better education. And for education for him meant very specifically the Indian traditional, what we can call spiritual education. He gave me the education that he had been dreaming of when he was young himself. He took me to the institution, Kailas Ashram Brahma Vidya Peetha, where he always wanted to study himself. So this is how this happened, that I was brought to Kailas Ashram. He was the one who asked my mother to start to teach me the Bhagwat Gita at the age of it was a few months, 3, 4, 5 months before my 5th birthday. So I was just 4.5. And already before that, when I was in London for 6 months, we used to visit a temple there, Sanatan Dharma temple. And I had found this small little statue of Lord Vishnu, which was little bit broken, and it was kept at the backside of the temple so that it can be thrown away into the river at some point. But I felt fascinated by it. I decided to keep it. I started worshipping it already. I think the inspiration came that one of my mother's very close Gujarati friend, if I remember correctly, then I think her name was also Manisha Patel. And at her home, I was introduced back then at the age of 4 to movies of Bhakta Prahlad, Bhakta Dhruv, Sant Gyaneshwar. Back then, I didn't know who all these characters were, but somehow that identification with children like Prahlad, and you want to be like Prahlad was worshipping Vishnu, you wanted to worship Vishnu. So that sort of, then of course my mother would never buy comics for me. She would always buy books on Krishna Leela, Rama Leela for me. So from very young age, my parents very slowly, smoothly, without imposing anything, without trying to impose anything, helped me to grow into this direction. So that is how, when I look back, I feel today. So, for example, one of the pictures that you saw was in London, Krishna Janmashtami celebration, where I'm doing pankha to
Yes.
Lord Shri Krishna. This picture is from London, from UK, from England. And yeah, I did not understand anything, but maybe there was some samskaras which made me feel fascinated towards these things. And I always felt drawn, even at that young age. And I was most excited. I still remember the day when I was doing pankha, uh, in that picture, and I didn't eat the whole day. And in the evening, my mother said, "Oh, you have not eaten the whole day," because it was a busy day. Hundreds of people were coming, and the whole day kirtan was going on. And I sort of, no, 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 I'm so happy. I don't want to eat. I just want to be there. So that was the kind of fascination, without knowing anything, without understanding anything, which I did have towards this. So from my
So,
very childhood.
yeah. So that's really actually fascinating. But you had the fascination without knowing anything. Your parents were, nurturing, but nobody can go through that kind of education. Till there, it was your parents' decision, right? That you should
Yes.
study this. But to study so much and study further and become such an expert in Sanskrit and in Vedas, it has to be your calling, right? And it is not easy to study Sanskrit grammar, and you're so well known in it, and also to write works in Sanskrit and Hindi and do translations. So there must be some amount of, motivation within, some intrinsic motivation that led you to what you have become today, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think initially the environment played a
A
very
huge
big
role.
role, a very big role. I mean, up to I was maybe 16, 17, 18. I just did everything because my parents told me to. And I was growing up in in an environment where this seemed to be the correct thing to do. Of course, at some point, I had to go through slightly a different phase as well, which helped me appreciate that which was given to me in my childhood and pulled me back. This was once I gained my freedom, so to say, when you are over your teens and you are a grown-up man, and now your parents uh, don't tell you as much anymore as they did earlier when you were a child, and you explore things. Then there is a phase in which a person has to go through this. But then at some point, yes, I realized the the tremendous benefit that I had in that upbringing, which then gradually pulled me back to that. So that
Okay.
is when I came absolutely wholeheartedly, not because someone told me, but because I loved studying the Upanishads. I loved contemplating them. I loved talking about them. I loved teaching them. Then I started doing it because I really loved it.
Okay.
And
Now,
the beautiful thing was, I think, that my parents gave me that freedom to actually to explore and to express, and did not hold me back from exploring myself.
beautiful. And
Yes.
Siddharthji, I see a lot of pressure around spirituality. I have known groups, I have sometimes been part of the groups. What is spirituality according to you? क्या ये इतनी भारी चीज है या बड़ी सहज चीज है?
Very difficult for me to, first of all, the word spirituality itself, for the lack of a better word, because in English, spiritus has more to do with the breath. And I love the word adhyatma, really,
Adya.
because I can relate with the Sanskrit word, which simply means to explore what lies within oneself. It is self-exploration. It is exploring the deeper inner layers of the mind, of the intellect, of consciousness. So whatever is, when someone starts, our tendency is always to look out, to explore the world around us. We very rarely explore what lies within ourselves. So that is what I understand as Adhyatma. I don't understand why there should be any pressure at all. This is self-exploration. No one needs to come between me and myself. There is no space for anyone or anything else to come in between. Having said that, in the initial formative years, the environment does play a very important role in the development of an individual. And like a child, when it is in the womb of its mother, 9 months, it is restricted, some restrictions. In fact, there is a beautiful mantra from the Atharva Veda that yonya eva pratyuto garbha, like the child which has been freed from the womb of its mother, pathaha sarva anukshya, be free to follow all paths that you deem correct. So there is tremendous freedom once growth is complete. But yeah, in the initial formative years, I feel that some restrictions are helpful. Just for the development, the way we create a hedge around the sapling, just so that it does not get destroyed by other animals or by the wind, etc. So just to protect it. But once the tree actually grows, then that hedge can become stifling. It can suffocate the tree. So then it has to be removed. Then it becomes meaningless. So if what we call pressure under spirituality, if it is that, then it does make sense initially. But if it's more than that, then we would have to discuss what kind of pressure that should be. But I guess spirituality should be about removing all pressures instead of putting any pressure of anyone. That is what I understand by
Fantastic.
spirituality.
I want to ask you a question. I hope I don't sound controversial. Can you hear me properly, Siddharthji?
Yes, and I don't think there is anything
Okay.
controversial
So,
about this.
no, because I have internet problem. So, tell
Yeah.
me this hedge that you are talking about, the hedge,
Yes.
so that the sapling grows in a particular direction. This hedge is needed for some time. Is the hedge also Guru?
It's the environment. It's the environment, particularly if I look back at the ashram environment, in Kailas ashram, for example. In Kailas ashram, and my father did try to protect me as I grew up from many, many things. So I don't know if it was the guru, but it was certainly the environment. Yes,
So Guru
certainly the
perhaps
environment.
gives you that environment,
Yes,
who directs
like
you.
like a mother. Like a mother, when she evolves the baby in her womb, she does protect the baby as well. So that protection for some time it's necessary, but after some time I think it gradually the child needs to, and this balance was there. When I look back in my childhood, my father started giving me more and more freedom as he realized that now it's the time for him to be free, and now he can handle his freedom. And if he saw that I could not handle it, he was always there. So I could always fall back on him. So I had his support
Okay, so
always.
since
Yes.
you're saying that spirituality is all about gaining yourself, attaining yourself, so
Yes.
it is not essential. Spirituality does not essentially has anything to do with concept of God. क्या एक नास्तिक भी spiritual हो सकता है?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, and this can be very controversial, but let me point out that Indian spirituality, and I'm here totally basing myself, I'm not presenting my views because it is a controversial matter. I don't want to express my view on this. Who am I? Let's look at the evidence, at the texts, at what the masters of the Indian spiritual traditions, the fathers of the Indian spiritual traditions think about it. And then let's form our own views based on that. So there are three major streams of spirituality in ancient India. We find the Vedic tradition, we find the Buddhist traditions, and we find the Jaina traditions. Now, Buddhist tradition clearly does not have a concept of God, and yet it is a wonderful, evolved, supreme, very well evolved meditative spiritual tradition. The same is true about Jainism. Now, just let's focus on Hinduism. Hinduism has had six philosophical, very powerful philosophical systems: Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, and Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta, the sixth one, happens to be Vedanta. Let's call it Vedanta for now. The sixth one has been the most influential one in the past 1200 years, but still all of them have been great spiritual thinkers, great spiritual rishis. For example, Maharshi Kanada of Vaisheshika Darshana. Now, out of these six, three are theistic and three are atheistic. So Maharshi Kanada's Vaisheshika Darshana is atheistic. Maharshi Kapila's Sankhya Darshana is atheistic. And Maharshi Jaimini's Mimamsa Darshana, which is a hardcore Vedic Darshana, is atheistic as well. So we have at least three ancient traditions within the Vedic traditions, three ancient philosophical streams of thought which did not see the need of conceptualizing God. Now there are the three others: Nyaya, Yoga, and Vedanta, which do have the concept of God in them. So they are theistic. So there has been but again, even Patanjali, for example, he presents Ishvara Pranidhanadva, devotion to God, as an optional thing, as if he's fully accepting that you can absolutely achieve the goal of spirituality without belief in God. You would have to work hard, very, very hard. With devotion to God, this is his view, how he seems to present the whole idea, that if you with devotion to God, it becomes easier. Again, even the idea of devotion, Buddha has it. So you can even have the idea of devotion without the idea of God. So there are so many different varieties, nuances in ancient spiritual tradition. It's a whole galaxy of different thinkers and masters. And to answer now your question based on this information, I would say that spirituality should be absolutely fine without God as well.
Okay, that is such an amazing and backed, with knowledge, your explanation. Also, I always hear, and when you read about spirituality, they always say that the desires should be dropped. So when you talk about dropping of desire, that itself is a desire. वो भी तो एक desire होता है कि मैं इतने घंटे मेडिटेट करूं और ऐसा मेरा आचरण हो और ऐसा मेरा स्वभाव हो. तो हम जब बात करते हैं डिजायर्स ड्रॉप करने की, तो ये भी तो डिजायर है कि हम ये डिजायर कर रहे हैं. Sometimes I'm talking of some people whom I have heard, whom I have read. I feel that, when they talk about dropping desire, वो इतनी दुखी आत्मा लगते हैं. I feel it should be very joyous, spirituality एक joyous चीज होनी चाहिए, कि ये नहीं कि सब it is something I get very confused sometimes. So what do you talk about this, dropping of desire? इसके बारे में कुछ बताइए.
Ji, ji. First of all, spirituality should be a very happy enterprise. That's I absolutely a very beautiful quotation from Shiva Sutra Vimarshini, which is a commentary, 10th century commentary on the Shiva Sutras from Kashmir Shaivism, comes Smera, Smera, Stimita, Vikasita, which means smile, smile, be still, and Vikasita, how to translate? Blossom, yes, blossom. So smile, smile, become still, and blossom. A very beautiful expression. So smiling, happiness, that's all. That, in fact, the very touchstone of whether was my practice correct or not, is that we should look at the result, that if it leads towards happiness, if after my 1.5 hour of practice of meditation or japa or svadhyaya, which means self-study, or yoga asana practice, if at the end of it I feel happy, I feel light, I feel delighted, I feel excited, I feel inspired, then it means that my practice has been perfect and correct. And if it leads to another state of mind, then it requires some critical analysis and finding that something somewhere in the approach must be, some component has not been there in the correct proportion. In the same way that after cooking and eating the food, if the food does not make you happy and does not make you content, then there is some problem. There was some problem which has to be found out. That's, I think, part of the spiritual practice, self-analysis. Having said that, when it comes to desires, the Sanskrit word for desire is raga, which means coloring. So there we are speaking about freeing our mind from the coloring of external objects, the imprints, that the longing that they leave behind. And because of that, then we suffer. Because, for example, if I deeply long something and I don't get it, then I suffer as a result of that. So they see raga, this coloring, this desire, as a fundamental cause, one of the 5 fundamental causes of suffering. And so it is particularly this type of desire which the yogic traditions try to eradicate. So we have to create a very clear distinction between wholesome desires and unwholesome desires. So if I'm having a desire of doing something wholesome, which leads to happiness, which leads to long-term joy, peace, stillness, then that desire is absolutely fine. A human being can never be absolutely free from desires. The mind thrives on desires. Desires are the food of the mind. So they need it. But what we can do is replace wholesome desires, is to replace unwholesome desires with wholesome one. This is, I think, this would be the correct picturing of transcending desires. It's not a blanket statement that transcend all desires, give up all desires. It's rather more the harmful desires, the ones which lead us into suffering, which are the cause of our suffering, to identify them and to overcome them.
So the mind should be very clear, and I feel that means the mind should be very alert that this is wholesome desire and unwholesome desire.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Absolutely. Mindfulness, the Sanskrit word for mindfulness. Mindfulness is a big word today. People have absolutely understood this, forgotten the Sanskrit word. The Buddha used it, Gita uses it, the Upanishads use it. Buddha used it in its Pali term, sati. And the Upanishads, the Gita uses it, the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras use it as smriti. It is this alertness constant alertness that you are referring to, which is constantly alert, constantly critically analyzes. If a desire arises within me, before I express it, is it a wholesome desire? Because the moment I have expressed it in my thoughts, words, and deeds and have acted upon it, I actually strengthen the subtle impression of that desire. So by acting it out, I strengthen it. So before acting out, this awareness, this alertness is required. If it's an unwholesome desire, then it is better. We cannot stop a desire from arising, but we can stop ourselves from acting it out. As human beings, I think if there is anything different between animals and us, is that they, whenever they have a desire, they straight away impulsively express it. We can decide not to express it. And I think that's what the Sanskrit word manushya, manava, ultimately stands for. And even the English word man, it comes from the same Proto-Indo-European root, man, to think. So we are, as thinking animals, we have this capacity. So spirituality would be about enhancing this capacity.
I just remembered something and I felt like laughing because in one of our written communication, you once told me, and I would like you to repeat it, where you saw a donkey in the middle of all hustle and bustle, and you saw that and you said, and he's standing there very still, and you said, if I could be like that donkey, so still,
Yes.
I would be a very big yogi. So stillness is a very important part of that awareness and that desire to feel spiritual, isn't it?
Yes.
So
I always,
that
when particularly, the roads in India, how busy they are, and when you see these sometimes it is the cows, sometimes it is the donkeys, how they sit extremely peacefully there, not at all caring about the entire traffic which passes around them. Ekanta, solitude, the third level of solitude that the Upanishadic masters speak of is this kind of solitude, when a person can find solitude effortlessly, inner peace absolutely effortlessly, even on a crossroad, very much like that donkey. So he's a wonderful master.
yeah and it has remained with me, this thing that you
Yes.
had mentioned.
Yes.
Also, Siddharthji, I'm going to now talk a little. I want you to talk a little about Gita, because we know Gita from here and there. Very few of us want to study Gita. Before I ask you about Gita, I also want, there is a myth around Gita where you said, where people think that अगर हमारे इष्ट देव शिव हैं, तो गीता तो कृष्ण की है, तो वो हमारे लिए नहीं है, or they don't connect to Gita. While the other day, when we were chatting and you said that Gita is the crux of the spirituality in Vedantic tradition, right?
Absolutely.
So can you just throw light on why do you think Gita is the essence of spirituality in the Vedantic tradition, and people should or should not associate Gita with their Ishtadev?
Yes. There are two ways at looking at it. First of all, one way of looking at it is that if you look historically, the great Shaiva masters in India, for example, Abhinavagupta, I think he's really one of the greatest Shaiva masters that ever came, that ever existed in India. Abhinavagupta, 10th century, great master from Kashmir, really one of the greatest luminaries of Kashmir Shaivism. And he has written an amazing commentary, one of the most beautiful, concise, extremely short, but absolutely to the point, very potent commentary on the Bhagwat Gita. So we already see that traditionally Shaiva masters who had dedicated themselves absolutely to that very particular form of the divine, they did not see their faith and their belief as an impediment or as an hindrance to approaching the Bhagavad Gita. So first of all, from that perspective. Now, from the perspective of the Bhagavad Gita, there are two Krishnas in the Bhagavad Gita, so to say. When we study the Bhagavad Gita, we discuss this in greater detail. I'll try to present it in very short. That there is one is this Guru Krishna, the avatar, the form that is speaking to Arjuna, which is the particular Ishta Devata of someone in the Vaishnava tradition. But then there is the other Krishna that he is actually speaking about. Gita is not about this Krishna. Gita is about that other Krishna, which is that supreme, formless, universal essence, pure consciousness residing within the heart of every living being, which the Shaivas call Shiva, Vaishnavas call Vishnu, Rama, or Krishna, or Buddhists call maybe Buddha, Shaktas call Shakti, Divine Mother. Depending on which tradition you belong to, you refer to it, to that same supreme essence. So someone with a deeper understanding of the Bhagavad Gita would straight away realize that the Bhagavad Gita is about that universal essence that different traditions describe through different names. And once this is realized, then the person realizes that no matter what faith you come from, no matter who is your Ishta Devata, Gita will help you in your journey. And that is why, for example, I would take the example of Bali today, which would be a typical example of a very Shaiva form of Hinduism. For the last 1,000 years, it is particularly from the 15th century onwards, it is the Shaiva stream of spirituality that has been mostly dominant. Shaiva stream of Hinduism, which has been dominant in Balinese Hinduism, and yet, so they will not worship Krishna so much. Some of them might even have problem with Krishna as a person, but all of them deeply respect the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita still forms the core text of Balinese Hindus, precisely because the Bhagavad Gita has this absolutely non-sectarian and universal, transcendental, all-embracing approach.
Okay.
So I would say that
So,
even a Buddhist will benefit, or anyone studying the Bhagavad Gita will absolutely benefit.
so it is more, you're saying, is like a code of conduct in spirituality, because I don't know Gita. Again, I have a very superficial knowledge, but I do have the desire now, being a Shaivya. Now I feel like knowing it because I think it's very important. So, it talks about Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. So if, you can just explain हर तीनों को आप संक्षेप में अगर बता दें तो बहुत अच्छा होगा.
Ji. The Bhagavad Gita is divided into these 3 sections, 6 chapters each. The first group of 6 chapters focuses more on action, action that is being performed without desire. So to evolve our activity, our duty, by cultivating 2 things. First of all, freeing oneself from the desire for the result of that action. And secondly, freeing oneself from this ego, from this sense of doership, from this sense of agency which lies at the root of activity. So this would be, in very simple terms, karma yoga. Bhakti yoga, in very simple terms, I absolutely don't like the English word devotion as a translation for bhakti. Bhakti should be supreme love, should be translated as supreme love. It should be translated as absolute faith in the entity which made sure that there should be milk in the breast of my mother at the time when I was born. My food, the food that I could take, was already ready in the breast of my mother at the moment of my birth. The entity, the universal essence, which takes care of me in that moment when I was in my most helpless moment, it took care of me. If I don't follow a wrong path, it will always care of me no matter what happens. This trust, this faith, and then to see that universal essence present within the all beings. So unconditional love. Prahlada does it in Vishnu Purana very beautifully, that he says unconditional love to the universal essence means unconditional love towards all beings without any discrimination, because the Ishvara of the Bhagwat Gita, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hrideshirjuna Tishtati, does not reside somewhere up there in some heavenly realms, but it resides within the heart of every living being. And I'm saying every living being, not only a human being, but every living being. So love and faith in that God means universal, supreme love, and having trust in that, in all these beings, supreme love towards all beings. That would be my understanding of Bhakti Yoga. And Jnana Yoga is a deeper understanding of the witnessing consciousness. It is a deeper exploration after these two aspects. It is going deeper within oneself and exploring the entity which witnesses the thoughts, which witnesses beliefs, which witnesses emotions, which witnesses everything that arises in the mind, like the seer, the perceiver of all this which is happening in the mind. And therefore this understanding enables a practitioner to raise above the mind. The real levitation of the ancient yogis, where they levitated above their own mind and did not get influenced by the monkey mind that one of the person asking the question has just talked about.
Yeah, he was asking something about, monkey mind. So
Yes.
I also
The
read
question
that.
is not here anymore.
What about
Now it
monkey
is here.
mind? How you react to those who have monkey mind in excess alertness? Is this not a part of mindfulness? How can monkey mind be part of mindfulness? He calls it extra alertness.
I think whenever I think of this monkey mind, Hanumanji comes to my mind. Hanumanji is precisely that monkey mind. See how Hanumanji grows. At a child, he was absolutely the monkey mind that you can think of. He was destroying the ashrams of rishis. He was doing everything. He was very बहुत ही नटखट थे, बहुत ही नटखट थे, बहुत ही ज़्यादा नटखट थे. But as he grew up, what tamed him was his love towards Bhagwan Ram. So I think it is precisely this Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, this love, this tremendous affection that we have towards the universal principle, which then gradually tames the mind. And from the monkey mind, which is so destructive, we get to someone like Hanumanji,
So,
the greatest
Mr. Bakshi,
devotee.
love can tame your monkey mind. That is what Siddharji is meaning to say. So, I hope we've answered your question. Okay, Siddharji, another thing that I want to ask you is, I'm talking about Krishna Bhakts. They very, or people who are reading Gita, they very easily categorize. नहीं तुम भक्ति मार्गी हो, नहीं तुम ज्ञान मार्गी हो. क्यों हम ये क्या तीनों अलग मार्ग हैं? नहीं, ये तो एक ही मार्ग होगा ना, क्योंकि अगर ज्ञान होगा तभी उसके प्रति भक्ति होगी और फिर आप कर्म वैसे करेंगे कि आप उस ज्ञान तक पहुंचे. तो मुझे ये डिफरेंशिएशन नहीं समझ में आता है. सो कैन यू एक्सप्लेन दिस?
Ji, I have seen this approach in certain traditions. I don't know those traditions. I have not formally studied those traditions very well, those which create this distinction. I've come across these people, and I hear it very often that they categorize people absolutely like you are saying, and I don't understand it myself as well, because in the Advaita Vedanta, in Shankaracharya's tradition, which has the Samuchaya approach, which means that step by step, you start with Karma Yoga, which is the very first step, how Bhagavan Shri Krishna in the first 6 chapters speaks about it. It is the very first step. And then as you evolve, selflessness in action comes with devotion, with bhakti. And the eradication of sense of agency or doership comes with jnana. So a karma yogi himself, and Krishna is just a karma yogi. Krishna's ideal yogi is not a yogi sitting in the Himalayas. His ideal yogi in the 3rd chapter very clearly is Janaka, who is ruling a kingdom and yet is an absolutely awakened Buddha, is an absolutely awakened being. Krishna's goal, Krishna's ideal yogi is someone like him. Krishna himself follows that. So within Karma Yoga itself, I think this is what Bhagavad Gita tries to point out, that within your sadhana of Karma Yoga itself, when you join Bhakti Yoga to it, it evolves to the 2nd level. And when you join Jnana Yoga into it, it evolves into the highest level. So that is a very holistic and a very I can say a very holistic picture of karma, bhakti, and jnana. I absolutely disagree from a personal level with this compartment, because each and every being has hands, has a heart, and has a head. And all the 3 of them have to be evolved, have to be cultivated, have to be better. And I think this wonderful greeting that we have in all Southeast Asian countries, Namaste, beautifully reminds us again and again, my hand pressed against my heart with a bowing head, that all these 3 are engaged in realizing the supreme essence that lies within you. So all the 3 have to be cultivated. And if you compartmentalize, you get bodybuilders who are maybe just building their biceps or their triceps and not building the whole body. So how would their body look like? It would be absolutely a disbalanced body. So that is my view on this. That's why I said I never fully understood this position, why people compartmentalize it. I think roundabout evolution requires all the 3 of them.
Siddharth, I have read Gita has solution for many things, and it talks about many aspects of life, of birth, of death. Can you tell us what Gita speaks about death, and how does one cope and understand the death of a near and dear one? Because people who I'm very close to are suffering, and I'm suffering with them. And it is very, very difficult to actually understand this concept of death and console yourself. So can you please throw some light on it?
Absolutely, absolutely. For years now, I have been working specifically with these type of people, and I have found Bhagavad Gita as a tremendous source of solace among those who have been suffering from the loss of near and dear ones. And the reason is that the very dilemma, that the very sadness that the Bhagavad Gita starts with, the very first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is Arjuna Vishada, the sadness, the grief of Arjuna, is because of the inevitable death of his dear and near ones which are standing in front of him. And there has been, even before the Bhagavad Gita, since extreme antiquity, we find it in the Upanishads, that this statement in Chandogya Upanishad, for example, that tarati shokam atmavit, grief can only be eradicated by exploring the deeper layers which lie beyond the mental layer where grief occurs. By reaching those layers, because grief is limited to the mind and the intellect, but there are even more deeper layers to ourselves. And only by reaching those layers, a person truly finds peace. And these are the layers that the Bhagavad Gita helps us to explore within ourselves. And because of that, the Upanishads already do that. Chandogya Upanishad does it. The Bhagavad Gita is absolutely a text focused. I think one thing that Bhagavad Gita does very, very convincingly and powerfully is the eradication of grief and suffering, which we find at the end when Arjuna declares that now he's not grieving anymore. He has been able to transcend his grief. So Bhagavad Gita, what does it speak about death? Death is a multifaceted experience. I don't know if we have now time to
Yeah, but you can
to go
talk a little
deeper.
about this, especially on death, which we want to hear.
Okay, so in the context of death, two things that straight away come to my mind is that as a source of wisdom, Shri Krishna inspires us to meditate on the experience of death. We see that even someone like the Buddha, at the source of someone like the Buddha, is his experience of someone else's death. So there is a very positive approach towards death. The 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is all about how to die absolutely peacefully. How to die absolutely peacefully. It describes what can be called the yogic death, the death of absolute, in absolute peace, without any suffering. So it approaches death from different parts, how someone else's death should be treated, and how we should meditate on our own inevitable. I think no one should have ever a doubt that one day I will experience this. So as a preparation for that, Srimad Bhagavad Gita also helps us to prepare for that. Not that we always think about it, but knowing death and meditating on it, contemplating it, preparing ourselves for it, reduces I think one of the biggest problems I see in today's society is that we don't talk about death. We are never prepared by it. We keep our eyes shut till it actually happens. And then it catches us completely unprepared. And we can do something about it. And I think Gita helps us do a lot about it.
Yes, Siddharth,
Particularly in the 8th chapter.
Which chapter is that?
8th chapter, particularly.
8th chapter. Okay, because we don't
all about.
We don't suffer our death. We suffer others' death,
and
that is
death.
something. Yeah, because that is something I think we need more preparedness, than our own death. This is what is my practical thinking. And also one last question, because we're running
this is what I meant by the two facets that the Bhagavad Gita, it addresses, because the fear of death is also the biggest fear which we have. So we suffer not only because of someone else's death, but we also constantly suffer because of the fear of death that is there. So Bhagavad Gita addresses both.
Okay. Now,
and they are deeply connected. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
मेरी एक last पे, it's a complaint that I have from you. एक शिकायत है जो शायद मैंने आपको लिखी भी है. You have written very scholarly books. इतनी स्कॉलरली किताबें आपने लिखी हैं जो हम नहीं पढ़ सकते हैं. वो संस्कृत में है या संस्कृत पे अनुवाद की गई हैं. You need to also write books from what you know, your knowledge, for people like us. We also deserve attention, and we also deserve books, coming from you. So why have you not done that? And I think you should speed up and do that, because as I told you, your chats are like amazing notes that I have, which I have saved it. They are so amazing. And ये सारे रोजमर्रा की चीजें हैं. आप जितने जो चीजें आप बताते हैं, I've never felt that you were this high scholar sitting on a pedestal. I've always felt you do think and talk, and you know understand things from our point of view. This gives hopes to people like me who are very ordinary and not who are like you. But it's not intimidating to feel that we can also attain somewhere what you have attained. So आप बताइए क्यों नहीं लिखा अब तक?
In the past 6-7 years, I have this has to be my learning, and I have worked a lot on precisely this point in my presentations, in my teachings, how to, and this is a big challenge, how to present these extremely ancient teachings in a modern context and make it easily
Practical.
understandable. Yeah, practical and easily understandable even to a child. My teacher always used to say that you are a real scholar only, and you understand your subject only the day you can teach it to a small child. And I think I'm still growing in that. I'm still teaching myself, learning how to do it. And something beautiful out of this will certainly come out at some
Very
point.
good. Thank you so much. It was really amazing talking to you, understanding
Always,
things from
always.
your point of view, and you trying to understand what questions I'm asking as a layperson. This is the most endearing thing about you, Siddharthji. And I think sometime we should do another session here when you talk about
Always, it
Yoga
will be
Sutra,
lovely.
which
Yes,
again people
yes,
don't know what is Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. Your mother is a very renowned yoga teacher. You are a yogic. You have got an award. So maybe sometime we could do on Yoga Sutra as well. Yes, Papni ji?
absolutely.
जी, मैं इतना क्या बोलते हैं सुनने में इतना था, देखा ही नहीं क्लॉक 1 घंटा हो गया।
हाँ.
हालाँकि ऐसा लग रहा है कि बस अभी 2 मिनट सिर्फ़ बात किए हैं, इतनी मीठी-मीठी बातें हो रही हैं और गीता के ऊपर जो आपने हाइलाइट किया है, आई थिंक ये तो खाली एक छोटी-सी
झलक है.
झलक है। तो जैसा आपने कहा मनीषा जी ने अभी इनको फिर बुलाएँगे। हालाँकि गीता को खोलने में बहुत आई थिंक कितने चैप्टर लग जाएँगे मालूम नहीं। लेकिन बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक है। आप जिस नमूने सरल भाषा में समझा रहे थे, इंग्लिश एंड हिंदी में, हालाँकि व्यूअर्स भी देख रहे हैं और फिर उनके कमेंट्स फिर बाद में भी आएँगे। ये अभी यूट्यूब और फेसबुक पे पड़ा होगा और
जी,
जो भी आपने कहा तो जो भी हमने मिस किया है, डेफिनेटली आई एम गोइंग टू रिवाइंड एंड लिसन टू यू अगेन एंड आई रिक्वेस्ट यू नाउ, यू प्लीज कम अगेन एंड वी टॉक मोर ऑन दिस वन। प्लीज
always.
अपना प्रेशियस टाइम इस पे भी दें। आजकल बुक्स जो पढ़े होते हैं तो लोग कम खोलते हैं, लेकिन आजकल थैंक्स टू टेक्नोलॉजी जो हम जस्ट यूट्यूब पे खोला और कुछ ना कुछ चैप्टर मिल जाता है, उस पे बात करते हैं किसी न किसी पे। आज मैं खुद को बहुत बड़ा लकी समझूंगा, भाग्यशाली समझूंगा। मनीषा जी ने आपको ढूंढ निकाला और आप यहाँ पर आए। हमारे व्यूअर्स ने बहुत कुछ पाया आपसे, हमारे जो आध्यात्मिक चैनल से जो लोग
मेरा
जुड़े
परम
हैं।
सौभाग्य।
जी, तो अभी खाली जाने से पहले मैं आपसे अगर कोई मिलना चाहे या कुछ हो तो कहाँ पर मिल सकते हैं?
या गीता
मैं
सीखना चाहे, कोर्सेज, आप अपने कोर्सेज के बारे में थोड़ा बताएं.
जी,
जी, जी। मैं अभी मैं तो ऋषिकेश में ही रहता हूँ। सन 85 से मैं ऋषिकेश में हूँ, which is these days known as the world capital of yoga. And we have this yoga center here, Patanjali Yoga Kendra, which was founded in 95. And as part of that, right now, we are still closed. We closed down as COVID started, and everybody got COVID there. But then, since then, I have been just active mainly online. October, November, May, we hope that we will open up. So that is basically my address. Patanjali Yoga Kendra, Rishikesh, the Iyengar Yoga Center, because my mother, she has been a she has been a direct disciple of B.K.'s Iyengar. So we run the local Rishikesh Iyengar Yoga Center.
सिद्धार्थ जी कभी बैंकॉक आए? मैं और मनीषा तो हम बैंकॉक में ही हैं। कब?
जी, मेरा बहुत स्वप्न है अयोध्या विजिट करने का। चियांग माई के जो एक बहुत बड़े संत थे अजाम थोंग, अब तो चले गए, नहीं तो उनसे मिलने का मेरा हमेशा बहुत मन होता था। पर ये 2 जगह हैं जो मैं ज़रूर आया हूँ। वैसे बैंकॉक में ब्रीफली 2013 में सुवर्णभूमि एयरपोर्ट वगैरह सब देखा वहाँ। वो समुद्र मंथन की बहुत सुंदर, क्योंकि आई थिंक इट्स वन ऑफ द मोस्ट एंशिएंट mythological stories, deeply symbolical in nature. So I was highly impressed by that figure. And yeah, Bangkok was beautiful. It was a very short experience, but it was beautiful, and I'll certainly come back.
आपकी सेवा करने के लिए तो please stay connected with us. Bangkok में हम हैं।
जी जी, it will be a great honor.
मनीषा, thank you very much. आपने अपना भी वक्त निकाला और आज
नहीं most welcome.
आज का जो शो आपने कंडक्ट किया बहुत अच्छा है। Thank you very much. जी।
And I have, in past 1.5 years, I've been talking to so many people, doing interviews. I was most delighted to talk to a scholar like him, because मुझे ऐसे कोई scholar इस level के कोई मिले ही नहीं, दिखे ही नहीं. So very nice, Siddharth ji. We will be in touch. Thank you so much.
जी. With this one, I like to say thank you to all, and see you with another speaker next time. Most probably, Manisha will recommend another speaker. Very interesting. सिद्धार्थ जी फिर आएंगे,
Of course आएंगे.
ठीक है.
मैं एज ए व्यूअर भी जुड़ूंगा जरूर, औरों को भी सुनना चाहूंगा। मनीषा जी किन किन को लाती हैं उन सबको सुनना चाहूंगा, तो जरूर जुड़ूंगा। बहुत सौभाग्य, बहुत सौभाग्य।